Welcome to Kingston Now. I'm Jimmy Buff. This week we're at Hudson Coffee Traders in Uptown Kingston for a chat with Ulster County Executive Mike Hein, a regular here. First though, let's talk to one of the owners of Hudson Coffee Traders, Tim Brooks. Hi Tim.
Hi Jimmy, how are you?
I'm well, thanks for hosting us today.
My pleasure.
So how long has Hudson Coffee Traders been open?
Just over 4 years.
And the anniversary coming up in
March.
Big anniversary plan, free coffee for everyone?
Possibly.
I don't want to put you on this spot. What did you do before Hudson Coffee Traders?
Mostly construction. I have student rentals in New Paltz, so income properties.
So how did that lead to a coffee store in Uptown Kingston?
That's a good question. About 8 years ago, my wife and 2 young daughters moved to Montana for a few years, and the Western the coffee culture out west is much more advanced than ours, and the product they have out there is much better. And I really became a coffee enthusiast out there. So even in Montana, you can get a good espresso almost on any corner. So I just it inspired me, and long story short, ended up opening Hudson Coffee Traders.
So you're almost open 5 years. It's a pretty unusual, a lot of new businesses don't make it after a year. You didn't really have a lot of experience coming in. It's pretty extraordinary that you've made it for almost 5 years. What has the experience been like so far?
It's been great. It's been a challenge in a good way. But I love the neighborhood. It's just Uptown Kingston is terrific. We have a great customer base, just professional people and just really happy people.
Well, let's talk about Uptown Kingston. When you were looking for a location for Hudson Coffee Traders, was this first on your list, or did you see a lot of other places?
This was one of the places that we wanted to open. This is one of the first places we looked. So,
well, what is it about Uptown Kingston that drew you here?
Well, just the beauty of the neighborhood here.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's gorgeous and historic, but you have to have enough of a customer base to support what you want to do.
Absolutely, and this is a really good area for that because it's a business district. It's very busy in the daytime.
Well, it's an interesting switch between Monday through Friday, say 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and then evenings and weekends when it's also really a residential place. Can you contrast the two for me?
Well, business we found really dies off after 5 or 6 when people go home. But I've noticed lately the street is really busy even at night. So but we're not ready to stay open more hours than we are.
Well, in the 5 years, almost 5 years that you've been open, these few blocks in Uptown Kingston have also kind of started to shift a little bit. There are some empty storefronts they've filled in. There are some events that are happening around the area. I know that when I walk past in the morning, the regulars whose spot we took over for the show today, are sitting here and having, it's almost a sense of community as well as going around.
It is. I've noticed a huge difference in the 4 years, that we've been here. Just the areas seem more vital, and just a lot of new businesses. And the whole mood of the street has seemed to change a bit for the good.
So let's talk about some of your products. What do you offer here at Hudson Coffee? I mean, obviously coffee.
Yep.
But it's not just coffee.
It's not just coffee. All our coffee is organic. And it's all fair trade.
Which, for people who don't know what fair trade means, perhaps you can give us an explanation?
Well, the coffee has to be purchased from it has to be purchased from growers in a certain way. And
there's sort of a practice involved in fair trade, right?
Right. They have to be paid a minimum, a certain minimum for their coffee.
Because prior to that, there was, people were taking advantage of the
Right. Yeah,
coffee
it's
growers.
been a really good thing. And our coffee is actually a grade above fair trade. It's direct trade, where our roaster buys it directly from the grower. so there's no middleman, and so our growers actually get quite a bit above fair trade, and they're motivated to produce a better product.
So you've got a bunch of different blends here on a daily basis.
We do. We don't have many blends. Our espresso is a blend, but our brewed coffee is generally a single origin, which means it comes from one specific growing region.
And it's the coffee drinks that people love these days, in addition to espresso and straight up coffee. You have your lattes and mochas and things as well, and food too, right?
Right, yeah, we serve an unbelievable amount of food here. Very surprised, but we have really good food here.
Was that part of the plan when you started?
It wasn't to do this much food, but there was a need for it, a demand for it, so we accommodated people.
You have events here as well at Hudson Coffee, and you also display local artwork on the wall. How do you pick that stuff?
Usually the artists come in and show us their work, and we put it up. It's great. Usually it lasts a month, and then we have new stuff up, so it's always have something new.
Well, congratulations, Tim, and we'll see you in March for that free coffee.
Thank you, Jimmy.
You're watching Kingston Now. Next up, it's Ulster County Executive Mike Hein. Stay with us. Welcome back to Kingston Now. This week we're at Hudson Coffee Traders in Uptown Kingston, and joining us now is Ulster County Executive Mike Hein. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you very much.
You put in long days as in your job as county executive, and they often start right here at Hudson.
They do, actually. I benefit from the caffeine associated with this, I am sure, in my morning startup.
Well, I pass you in my civilian clothes walking my dogs in the morning as you are heading in here, and you get your coffee, and you don't quite have a round table. You have a rectangular table in the background with a group of regulars. Is that just casual, or are you really working things out with those folks?
It is very casual. What happens is, in that situation, I love to get input. I believe that, as an inclusive leader, that's the way you become the best possible leader. And so I love getting input from a broad spectrum of people, and I think it's great.
Your trip to county executive is an interesting one. You are a local.
Absolutely.
You are the first in your family to go to college.
No question.
And then after college, you had a business degree, am I correct?
Correct.
You got some interesting advice from your grandfather. Could you tell us that story?
I sure can. Well, it's important to understand my story's not unique. There's so many people that have had stories very similar to this, and I'm touched every time I go and speak at places like our community college or many other places. I see the same kind of a situation from families of immigrants and a whole host of other folks who become the first people in their family. My story is really very simple. My family comes from, again, there are many Italian-American immigrants and German-American immigrants who came to our country. I grew up on a farm in Esopus. My grandfather and grandmother were there. They were fantastic. I had a wonderful, wholesome upbringing. We didn't have any money.
A lot of fresh milk.
We had a lot of fresh produce. I always say we lived one of those idyllic lives in that we had great food, great opportunity to be outside, great recreation. But again, we came from a very humble beginning. The reality was, my grandfather, when he came here, was, again, one of 11 children. They did not have a significant amount of money, as you can imagine. And in that situation, they worked extremely hard and appreciated the value of an education, though none of them had graduated. My grandfather, the highest grade he achieved was 6th grade. And so when I was able to go to college, and I was very blessed to be able to do that and get a great education, it was really important to him. I remember when I was coming back from college, I just graduated, he asked me if I would come visit him on his farm. And he told me I had to bring the diploma. And so I brought the diploma and I brought it over. And as a young man, I didn't truly understand what that meant to him and the importance of that to him. And my grandfather was one of the toughest people I have ever met. A Depression era individual, a person who didn't cry at weddings and funerals, babies. He really did, he was a very tough guy. When he saw my diploma, he began to weep. And it was one of those moments where it is eye-opening for you as a human being, and you realize he understood that his family came to this country for the American dream, for a greater opportunity, and for things that many of them would not live to see. So this was a really important moment for him. And then he shared with me something that I take with me to this day. It's clearly one of the core reasons on why I ran for government. He said, you have an obligation now. This country has provided you with an opportunity because of all the people whose shoulders you stand on. Now you have not only an opportunity, but an obligation to give back. And you must find the path that allows you to give back. And so when I was a banker, and then I ultimately went to work with in the Treasurer's Department of the county and ultimately made a decision to run for county executive, I could hear his words in the back of my head all through the process. It's an opportunity to be able to give back. You know, I turned down greater job opportunities, larger money, all those kinds of things, but this is my home. And I feel very privileged to have wonderful people that I work with in very trying times, obviously. But we take on the important issues, and we are much more concerned about what's good for the people of our community than for what's typically the politically accurate thing to do.
So what is the state of Ulster County these days?
Well, first and foremost, we're blessed. We live in one of the greatest places in the entire world. From places like the walkway over the Hudson, places like Woodstock, historic Kingston, New Paltz, Saugerties. When you look all around, and the many other towns, there's fantastic things for us to do every single day.
You've got Catskill Mountains and Hudson River.
You have everything. It's a four-season destination, and we've worked hard to be able to make that a reality. We've worked with our tourism department. Tourism in Ulster County is up because what we've done is we've made it a much more formal, structured organization where we really work through ulstercountyalive.com to be able to draw people to our community. We work with our private sector partners in the process, people in the hospitality industry, and it's working. Okay, we have brought business principles to that portion of county government, and it really has been successful, and so I could not be more pleased. We obviously have more and more work to do every day, but attracting people here from our tourism economy, which is a $500 million part of our economy, is an exciting success, and we look to make it even greater. But that said, again, we also have the same challenges that face everyone in the state of New York and everyone in our nation. You know, there's a stubborn economy. We see that all over the place.
House values are
House
challenged.
values, unemployment levels. These are all things that we look to tackle all the time. We continually look at whether the structure and how we provide economic development assistance is the correct way to work with the governor's regional councils. Those are things that we'll work with. We also have those unending challenges of taking on folks like the New York City DEP. You know, the reality is what they have done in our community has been highly inappropriate.
Let's talk about that when we come
Sure.
back. It's a good story.
Absolutely.
This is Kingston Now. More from Hudson Coffee Traders with Ulster County Executive Mike Hein when we come back. You're watching Kingston Now, and we're joined again by Ulster County Executive Mike Hein. Mike, last year, Hurricane Irene and Tropical Storm Lee came through the area, did
Sure.
some damage, and you were an extraordinary leader during that time for Ulster County. You've also taken the lead in the fight against New York City. It's a David and Goliath story, and that's because New York City has their water supply here in the Catskill Mountains, and except that they don't always treat their neighbors so neighborly, and you're getting into it with Mayor Bloomberg. So tell me what's the state of that fight?
Well, again, I'm thrilled that we have made significant progress recently. For decades, literally 107 years, it was the David versus Goliath. We've changed our form of government, and now, rather than them being able to play divide and conquer with smaller towns, they have to take on a larger single voice, speaking for the entire county, that's able to push back. And so in that process, we are pushing back, whether it be the flooding that they have caused in Wawarsing, or whether the flooding downstream from the Ashokan Reservoir that they have caused, or whether it becomes the dumping that they have done. They have polluted our waterways. They've broken the law. That's what it really comes down to. They've broken the law. There's a Clean Water Act. The nice part is, in spite of all the ability they have to push back, in spite of all the political capital that they have to push on us, the reality is we're making great progress. The federal government, through the EPA, recently sided with Ulster County and said the New York City DEP has to change. What they are doing is fundamentally wrong. So we're excited about that. That's the first big win in this battle for the people of Ulster County in 107 years.
Are there specifics about what they're going to have to do and any kind of timetable?
That'll all be played out in something called the Filtration, Avoidance, Determination. It's a critical document that comes out that makes sure that New York City is able to get its, again, 40% of its drinking water comes from Ulster County, and we want to be good neighbors. The people of our community have never shirked their obligation to provide water to the people of New York City. And it's not the people of New York City we have a problem with. The problem we have is with a bureaucracy called the New York City DEP. We refer to it as the Department of Environmental Pollution. What they have done, they're the biggest polluter in our community. They've taken advantage of the kind nature of so many folks in our community and their towns. They brought in their own police force. They don't follow normal rules and regulations. Just imagine Ulster County controlling 4 or 5 blocks in central Manhattan. You know, it seems almost absurd, but that's precisely what goes on here. And it would be one thing if they were a wonderful partner, but they don't pay their fair share in taxes, and that burden gets pushed off on local property taxpayers. And as a result, the people of Ulster County subsidize water rates in New York City. And it doesn't stop there. Because of their dumping highly concentrated water that is polluted, it's not regular water. They allow it to concentrate in the Ashokan Reservoir, and then they dump it down the lower Esopus, and they take the clean water for themselves.
And if anyone wants to know when that's happening, it's when the Esopus and other creeks look like chocolate milk.
Correct. And what they did was, and it's important to understand, if we dumped 1 gallon of the type of water they were putting down the lower Esopus in the watershed, we'd be subject to fines of $37,000. They dumped 600 million gallons every single day for 8 months straight on the people of our community. It damaged properties along the lower Esopus River. It made it difficult for people to be able to use this water for agriculture. It closed decades-old beaches in places like Saugerties, and it silted over major portions where we have Coast Guard ships that actually cut the ice to make sure in the winter that home heating oil can make it to upstate New York. This is unacceptable. But the worst thing of all, they sacrifice drinking water for people, or put at risk drinking water for people in the town of Esopus. They draw water off the Hudson, and this heavily murky, muddy water concentrated goes down and has to be filtered by the water treatment plant in Esopus, and they're doing a fine job doing it, and they're keeping it safe. But the reality is, somebody in New York City made the decision that the drinking water in Esopus was less important than the drinking water for them. That wasn't a decision made locally, and the actions that were taken is fighting back. When it came to things like fracking, think about the fracking issue and how volatile it is. To me, it's a pretty simple situation. The science doesn't support fracking in my mind.
Yet the governor is, according to all reports, is on the verge of allowing limited fracking. How does that happen?
Well, I look at it in a very simple situation. We're talking about the drinking water, not just for ourselves, but for our children and our children's children. And the willingness to play fast and loose with that does not, again, it's not something that I can feel comfortable with. And so in this situation, I look at it very simply. I don't support fracking. And I was stunned when I watched the hypocrisy that was Mayor Bloomberg on this issue. He came out and he basically said, he supports fracking. He supports fracking because he thinks it's a wonderful access to energy for our country, as long as it's not in the New York City watershed. Basically, he's okay with poisoning those people upstate New York. He's just not okay if it doesn't anywhere endanger the New York City watershed.
Yeah, and that position was just recently in an op-ed for the Washington Post.
Utterly disgraceful. Yeah. And again, it, in my opinion, speaks volumes about why the New York City DEP has functioned the way it does. When the mayor has not had a willingness to step in and address this, he puts the people of Ulster County at risk.
Can a locality like Ulster County pass anti-fracking regulations that are in place and are not superseded should the governor allow limited fracking?
Well, again, there's 2 separate things. First and foremost, I've done everything I can do as the county executive, and that was to be able to come out and simply say, Ulster County will not use any byproducts of fracking or any way, shape, or form will participate in this process. In addition, there are many towns now, because these are local land use issues, that are stepping up trying to identify the best ways to ban fracking in their communities. There is a genuine concern about this for many people from an environmental perspective, but again, it comes from what I believe is just a common sense approach of protecting your natural resources. And so I understand, I'm not, the desire that some people have for a quick buck in parts of our state, but I do not support selling our children's future for a quick buck today.
Mike Hein, County Executive, as always, you're terrific, you're on it, you're providing great
that.
leadership for the county. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's it for this week's show. Thanks to Tim and Donna Brooks and the staff here at Hudson Coffee Traders. To find out more about them, go to hudsoncoffeetraders.com. Thanks also to Ulster County Executive Mike Hein. For all things Ulster County, go to co.ulster.ny.us. Remember, all of our shows are archived on our YouTube channel, and you can find that link on our Facebook page. For Kingston Now, I'm Jimmy Buff. I'll see you next time.